besties. This is Julie.
And this is Chantel, and we are Viera Vida.
Welcome back to the show. We're so excited to be here today. Today we are remote. You know how it goes. COVID is, a little unpredictable, and we're just figuring out our lives. So
Yeah,
welcome.
it's
How
still
you
real
feeling
out in the.
today?
I'm good. How are you, my friend? How are you?
Very well. Very well. Thank you.
Okay. I see the curls are like, really starting coming with the formation. Okay, curls. Now let's get in formation. You better tell them.
So I
And to let everyone know, so Julie and I have been friends as long as we've almost both been in our relationships. You probably a little longer, but so has that been 11 years now? 12, 11?
Yeah. 2009. So yeah, almost 11 years.
Yeah, so and all the time that I've known Julie, I knew she always talked about curly hairs, photos of her having curly hair, but I've never seen her curls like this. So friend, they look good. They're coming through
Why
for
would you have
that's
saffron?
their friend.
Oh, let me drop this one in the front. Thank you. No,
You're welcome.
and it's true. I've just been embracing them recently because I generally would get the keratin treatment, different straightening treatments throughout the year. So my hair would never get straight from them, but it would have like I don't know, a
Like
little
a
bit of
wave.
wave. Yeah. And then COVID happened and I was like, oh, I can't get my keratin treatment. And I realized that my curls were like starting to try to come back. And then I found them to be mediocre. So I said I'm going to embrace them and then take care of them in a way I'm supposed to.
Well, they look good.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I sleep with my bonnet and everything.
Oh,
What's
it's
going on
serious.
in your life,
This whole hair
Chantel
journey is
Breezy?
serious. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead. What were you saying? I'm sorry.
What's going on in your life, Chantel
um,
Breezy?
Not much. Same old, same old. Pandemic is still real. The coronavirus is still real out here in these streets.
Mhm.
Still working. Everyone knows if you've been following along, I work at a Head Start. We've, thank the Father, it's been pretty good. Everything that's been going on there. We do have children in person. And again, with the coronavirus, just trying to figure out what our next steps are. Because things are only beginning to increase. But I'm thankful, we're still working, we're still doing what we need to do. Kids are healthy, everything's good. Yeah. I
What
mean,
is
I'm
it?
hot in this sweater I got on this morning because I ain't really checked the weather, but it is what it is.
It's warm and beautiful. I just shut the blinds in front of me so I wouldn't look like Casper the Friendly Ghost, but it's beautiful out there.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, what are you hearing? Because I feel like as an administrator at a Head Start, you might know what the trends are looking like.
So I do know that some of the organizations around us who have Head Starts, they too. So we're gonna talk about what we might need to do if certain things happen. Where we might need to shift, just have a plan ready, right? And we are finding out and talking to other organizations around us. We're not the I missed what you did. I see a smirk. We're not the only ones talking about this plan. So everyone's just getting prepared because we know what happened the last time in March. And with numbers only increasing, we have children. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if the city or the state is going to tell us we have to, shut things down. So just being proactive and being ready. And we're waiting for, I think this coming Tuesday, there's going to be an announcement made, I think by the school district. We don't know what that is. That's all we know. So we're kind of watching. Yeah.
Ambiguity. It's like the
Yeah.
Hunger Games out here.
I know. See, for real though, friend. For
Yes.
real. So while I'm also good, I have to say I have a little bit of anxiety, even though the race is looking the way it is. We're waiting for it to be called.
Normal.
I just need it to be done and be called. That's all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and I wanted to talk about that a little bit today, but we won't jump into that until we do our roses of the week.
Roses
Roses of the week.
appreciation.
That's not the Roses of the Week song, but I'm gonna go with it.
We're about to make it the roses of the week.
So if you're new around here, you may or may not know that roses are a concept that Chantel and I guess you came up with, Chantel, and we've embraced on our show. And basically, we want to give our shout outs by giving roses while people are here. So, Chantel, That being said, do you have roses you would like to share with the community?
So you know who I want to give my roses to because I started thinking about community? Stacey Abrams.
Okay,
Stacey.
okay, we're not on a first name basis, my bad.
I know. Miss Stacey Abrams. No, to know that her efforts in getting nearly 800,000 people registered to vote, that's big. Georgia like
Huge.
flipped. It's huge.
Huge.
Huge, 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 huge. So I really, yeah, we don't know her personally, but to know the work that she put in, she lost her race. She ran for governor of Georgia in 2018. She lost by a small margin, so it's not like it was something like really big. But even in the losing, and I think that also can speak to us. Even in her losing, she still was like, "No, I'm still going to fight, and I'm still going
Yeah,
to help the community and the people and my nation and how I can." And 800,000 voters.
that's
So,
insane.
yeah,
Wow. Wow. I
yeah.
mean, you might have had the best roses. I'm still gonna try.
You'll be good, friend. You'll be good. You'll be good.
I love that, and I actually have been really excited about Stacey Abrams' efforts. And I watched a video this morning, and it was, that scene in Sister Act where they're singing, the children are singing, but they're singing to like, just the people that are, I guess, I can't
Was it
remember,
the
part
nuns?
of the community. Sorry.
Was it the nuns and everything? The old happy days?
Yeah, part of the
Yeah.
congregation. So then as it starts off, it's talking about how different nuns were different states, and then Stacey Abrams was Whoopi Goldberg, just like candling everybody. And then by the end, some of the swing states were some of the people in the choir really killing it. And I would post that video somewhere, or
Please,
if you
please,
guys could
please.
look it up, the Sister Act election.
Sorry.
Hilarious.
My mind automatically went Sister Act 2. I forgot there was a Sister Act. I know what you're talking about. My bad.
Sister Act 2 is really good, and it's very few and far between that a sequel is just as good.
That is so true. Yeah.
It's so true. That being said, I still no more for my roses. I would like to give my roses to the swing states and Georgia.
Whoop,
Okay,
whoop, whoop, whoop.
I'm here for Georgia right now because since what is it, like 1992, Georgia has been red,
Mhm.
and like they're in the deep south, and there's just a lot of what would we call
How do you say?
how do you
¿Cómo se
say
dice?
xenophobic and racist mindsets that tend to permeate at least our thought process of what Georgians look like. But now it's Georgia, because it is turning around, and that just, to me, win or lose, that state is just really enlightening, and it's
Yeah.
also encouraging, because while it's scary that this election is so close, right? And because they're just so polarizing, each of the candidates, it's also encouraging to see that some people are turning around and realizing that, you have to step to the other side at some point for your belief systems and such. And then if you look at the popular vote, you're really reminded that whether or not the Electoral College is looking so close, it's not all that close when it comes to the popular vote. So most people are very much sharing at least what ideologies are.
Mhm.
And that's not to say that some Republican ideologies might not be ones that I would align with, but right now, to
Right.
me, the people, justice, morals, and just acceptance is the most important. So
Yeah.
shout out to Georgia.
Yeah. Go Georgia. I agree with that. Nobody, in my mind, I'm not saying that you have to be a Democrat. But again, just lining up our ideologies. The candidate for running for the Republican Party he's not it. He's not it. He's already had 4 years. We've seen how he's handled the pandemic. And I had a conversation with my sister, and I'm not saying you have to be the most eloquent person to be president. You don't have to have all of the words and all these big words to be able to stand on that podium and give your speech. However, it has to make sense. It has to make sense, and you have to say, like, you have to know what you're talking about. I'm not saying you have to go read a thesaurus and all this stuff to like change it up, but at least know what you're talking about. Give us facts. Don't try to lie to us. Don't try to make things up. And that I think is the problem. That is the problem. Not think, it is in my mind.
Right.
So,
I
yeah.
agree with you, Chantel. And with that being said, we've gotten our roses in, and we're just going to be jumping into this episode after this break where we're going to discuss how we are feeling about the state of America at this point, about the election, about these different topics. And this is a safe place, you guys. So if you feel one way or another, go ahead and comment in the comments, and we'll like include you in the discussion. That being said, please be respectful in the
Yeah.
comments. So just after this break, we're going to come back and have a little bit more of a discussion surrounding the election here in the United States.
I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. And even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, Maria, and she convinced me to continue my education. Just never judges. She's a true role model.
From the depths of my heart, I thank you, Maria, for being a friend and a beautiful person. No one receives a diploma alone, and I'm honored to share this moment with you. Thank you.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Hey besties, welcome back to the Viera Vida show. Today, Chantel and I are here discussing the state of America as we see it today during a long election week and with a lot of turmoil surrounding the election in our country. Chantel and I are going to have a very opinionated discussion because we are only able to share our opinions, our point of view. That being said, if you have interest or different points of view, go ahead and put that in the comments, whether it's on YouTube or you go ahead and message it to us. And we are so glad to keep you guys in the loop and included in the conversation. Chantel.
Yes.
Before this break, you were sharing a little bit of your experience with this election cycle so far.
Yeah.
Let's just recap a little bit of where your thought process was.
Yes. So I also want to piggyback on with Julie saying about the opinions. Our opinions are our own opinions. It doesn't respect Islam media. Just want to put that little disclaimer out there. So I guess with how I'm feeling, right? Is that what you're asking me to recap that?
Right.
I have a little anxiety just because I'm just ready for this to be over. And I know last night, so I watched the footage. I've been following up with CNN's website because they're keeping like everything up to date pretty well for me. That's who I'm choosing to watch. And when they went to Pennsylvania to get like an update, they were thinking and hoping it was done. And he was like, "We're stopping counting." And the whole room was like, "Oh, that's like, that's how I felt." And I get it. Like these people are working hard. They're working tirelessly. They want to make sure that the election is running the way it's supposed to, that, you know, they're holding up to the American values and everything, the way that it was set up by our founding fathers of the country, or the founding father. Never mind. That's a whole nother topic, a whole nother conversation. Yeah, so sorry. But yeah, so I check my phone all the time, and I think a lot of people are, because there's memes about it, there's jokes about it, how that's the first thing everyone's doing, or there's ones going around like, "Oh, I'm not going to check the elections," and they're like checking their phones, and like the results every 5 minutes, and that's been me. I just want it done, and again, one of the things that I said that before the break is, I'm not saying that you can't be a Republican, and Julie feels the same. We're not saying that you can't have different views as far as taxes, all that other stuff. But when it comes to human rights, and when it comes to what's going on with this pandemic, and when it comes to the rhetoric that's coming out of his mouth, and even now, I'm hoping people see it. I think people are still drinking of that Kool-Aid and believing things he's saying about this election being stolen. It's math, like everyone's saying, it's basic math, what's going on right now. I just, for all those reasons, he's not the right candidate to continue to run this country. And the last thing I'm gonna say, and then turn it over to Julie for, how you're feeling and your thoughts about all this. I feel like Trump has messed it up for the person who's not presidential and who does not have a political background, right? And that's sad because do I think that someone who might say, hey, you know what, they're really smart, they know civics, and they might want to run and they might have a chance, they might have been great for our country. I don't know if we're going to trust that at this point. I kind of feel like we might want to see your political, your resume. We want to see what you've done in, you know, in that industry, in that area. So that's just my thoughts on it.
Wow. I agree with all of that. And I like your thoughts on what you've been thinking. I also, I echo some of, actually all of those sentiments, to be honest. In terms of what I'm thinking, in terms of just like my psyche, right? Beyond what my feelings are with the election, is this is a very stressful time. It's a high anxiety time for our entire nation, actually for the world. A lot of people in the world are looking to us to be leaders, to maybe get back within the Paris Accord, or maybe to be leaders in terms of military or whatever it is. And that shows me that everyone's a little anxious. So how does that affect the world that we're living in? How does that affect your daily life, right? We like to think that we can keep those things separated, but when it comes to basic human psychology, these things will be affecting the way that we're living, right? In the next few weeks, in the next coming months. And so I have a fear. I do. I have an anxiety about what that's going to mean at gas stations when
Yeah.
two people come together and they share opposing beliefs, or what that's going to mean at school for the children who are trying to figure out whether or not they're going to be going into class, seeing out how the pandemic's being handled, how it's not being handled. So my opinion on what the process is itself and like what it's doing is that this is one of the hardest elections that I think especially our youth has to face, and at least in the history that we've been alive, right? And that's something to keep in mind as a parent, as a friend, as an aunt, whatever role you play in people's lives, because this is a time to really reach out and unite in whatever way you can.
Yeah.
And find some positivity, somebody to talk to, somebody to just be there for you.
Yeah, that's very true. We have a comment from Derek Smith. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being a friend. Okay. Put he's a scarecrow and so are his followers. Show him and his followers the way to Oz, please. And I have a follow-up to that comment. And also follow up to Julie with the fear. Because, once Trump's first
I'm so sorry, you guys.
you're fine. Looks like I'm
My mom, but since I'm on my computer, I can't turn off the sound.
Yeah. Knowing, so after he gave his first speech out of the East Room about how, like, we won, let's stop the counting, this is over, why are the numbers flipping? I started to think about the fact that if Biden pulls this out, because this was, before the race started getting tighter, if Biden pulls this out and he wins, and the voters definitely voted for him, and he wins the Electoral College and all that good stuff, what does this mean after the fact? Like, what is Trump going to tell people who follow him, who actually take what he's saying as like gold? And are they actually going to go out and start harming people? My fear is what danger this could potentially bring to the streets. And I'm not trying to like start some scare tactic, start some paranoia, but that really went through my mind because there's people, we've already seen it in Virginia. They've gone and they've marched, and then he didn't, he backed it, he supported it, saying there was fine people on both sides, or there were good people or whatever he said on both sides. So things like that makes me nervous to know what's going to happen should he lose. What speeches is he going to give? What is he going to tweet that's going to really push people who are racist and believe what he says and might try to harm somebody because they feel you guys lost it and we're going to keep America the way America needs to be kept.
Right. And that sentiment is very much pervasive because our quote unquote leader is creating that, right? He's sharing ideologies of theft with an election. He's undermining our democracy in many ways that are very crucial to the mindset of those who are following him, but
Yeah.
also are very dangerous. And that's why I feel like it's irresponsible to come out, even if you did feel like the election were rigged in some type of way, file, maybe deal with that after the election. But during an election process, that it undermines what I think democracy is about. And do you believe that's his tactic, or do you believe that's his personality? What are you thinking there?
So at first I thought it was his tactic, but I really think it's his personality. Do I know the man personally? No, but just knowing what he's tweeting, seeing what he's saying, it really makes me think that like there's not a lot going on upstairs. And I'm sorry, I don't want to judge somebody. I think that's wrong, but the Bible says judge a tree by its fruit, even though I think it's talking about those within the body, whatever. That's again another topic, another conversation. But just knowing what he's saying, the tweets that are coming out, I just really think he believes what comes out of his mouth. Like, I don't know if that's just a tactic. I think he really believes that, the vote should have been stopped in Georgia. They should have been stopped in Pennsylvania, but keep voting in where was he inching up in? Was it Arizona or Nevada? He started like closing the gap.
Oh, right.
But keep counting there. And it's just like, wait a minute. No, every vote has to be counted. So stuff like that is wrong. And then Julie, I know you know better than I do. When votes come in within a certain percentage, they do a recount anyway. Isn't that correct?
So not automatically. So
Okay.
depending on the state, because this is a state by state law, there are different margins in which when there is such a close call within maybe 1%, or in some states 5%, or maybe 0.5%, it depends on the state, then the state or the government will be the one that pays for that recount. Other than that, if it's outside of those margins, if it doesn't meet that threshold, then the candidate does have the ability to call for a recount. But when they call for that recount, they would have to pay for that out of their pocket.
Okay.
So it's interesting because I actually disagree with the thought that this is just Trump's personality, and here's why. I think I'm going to say this. I'm going to say this out my mouth. I think Trump is actually maybe smarter than we give him credit for. And he knows that a lot of people are very much followers. And the reason I think that this is an actual built out strategy is because before the election, he was very much echoing all of these sentiments, right? He was sharing that he thought it would be rigged. He was sharing that his lawyers would be ready. All these cases that they've already brought to our government, to our courts, were already written out. The lawyers already knew that it was going to be rigged. How do you know that? No one voted yet, homie. So that's why I think it was very much a tactical effort. That being said, part of his personality did come out where he doesn't know too much about our political system. That's very clear. And so his personality comes out when he says, stop counting votes here, and then doesn't realize that these are actual votes that count because people voted before election day. But in a state like Pennsylvania, for example, you said that we can't vote, or we can't count our votes or open votes and ballots before election day. And now you're going to come back and be like, well, why is it taking so long? Well, sir, because we didn't have time to open the votes.
Yeah. If I had a soundboard, I would have played Fred Sanford's "You Big Dummy," but that's literally went through my head. We have a comment from Josh Hawkins, who we love here on the Viera Vida show. What's up, Josh? Derek Smith, we love you too. Josh has been on filling in for Julie and I when we both weren't able to make it to the show. This could definitely be the prequel to the Hunger Games.
Yes.
On the radio, Julie was like mid sip of her coffee, so that's why there was like a pause.
Yes, yeah. You guys, yes. And we did also make that analogy before, and how scary is that, right? If you haven't seen the Hunger Games, you should be scared by that sentiment.
Yeah.
I also did want to give Josh a little shout out. Josh is always there for us to support our show in many ways. And he is actually out of town today. So he texted me this morning. He was like, I'm out of town. So does that mean that you guys are going to be recording live? And I was like, it does. Because last week we weren't recording live and he was available.
Yeah.
Such a
Oh, he was available last week. He was available last week to record, and we were.
Yes. I found out right after I messaged our engineer. And I was like, oh, we already talked to our engineer, who's great. Thank you, Olivia, for everything that you do. But it's just so great to see how behind the scenes we have a support system. This is so important, right? And Josh is amazing, but he also has his own podcast, Your Cup of Tea, but you'll see him on the show further. We also have another comment. And this is also from Mr. Derek, Chantel's father. And it says, Julie is extremely nice, saying he's smarter than we give him credit for. He doesn't have one brain cell within himself, and I'm being nice. Yeah. I can totally get that.
So then where, Julie and I both had opposing views about whether, it's personality or is it a tactic, right? I have to okay. I'm not trying to give him credit for anything. That's not what I'm trying to do. But he definitely has something in his book, in his game plan, that works, whatever that is, whether it's his personality or his great marketing skills, because the man does have great marketing skills. We've seen with his reality show, The Apprentice, people that believe in his tweets, he became president of the United States. So but then again, we can go back and we can argue that people, a lot of people didn't come out. There was a lot of people didn't go and vote. I think a lot of people thought Hillary just had it. I think Hillary thought she just had it. So she didn't really go and talk to certain places. She didn't go and stop where she should have stopped. So there's a lot of other things we can discuss as to why, whether he actually won that election or if we the people just did not do what we needed to do for that election. But, the man won, he did. And again, that's not to say that I'm giving him credit, but there's something in his game plan for him to have all the bankruptcies that he's had and to still be seen as like status, even before he became president. There's so many songs you can go back to, rapper songs where they're talking about like Donald Trump let me in and Trump Towers and all this stuff. So that puts me on the fence of, is his personality or is it tactic?
Yeah, and I get that because he's a master manipulator, right? And so this is also why I feel like this is such a hard question, because manipulation is something that is both strategic, a mindset, but it's also a personality issue, right? And so because he's so manipulative, it's hard to figure out what the thought process is. And I'm sorry if you're listening to the show and you feel, differently, feel free to chime in, but I do believe that this is manipulation. And when you talk about us not doing our job in 2016, I actually have a point that I wanted to bring up and discuss with you, and that's the point of the electoral college versus a popular vote. Because in 2016, Hillary Clinton actually had like 2.8 million more votes than our current president, and that popular vote was not victorious, right? And so what do you think about the electoral college versus the popular vote?
I do think we need to do away with it. That's my opinion. I can maybe understand why it was set up. But at the same time, we're starting to see, first of all, with 2020, with technology, even before 2020, with the technology that we had, with the marketing, with the advertising, with social media and everything that you can put out there, that they're things that they're sharing and the ads that they're putting out are not necessarily always true. A cat walked across the street. I have to like narrate for the people who may be listening to a live stream and not the video. They said that Trump spent like tons of money in the 2016 election on ads and advertisement. And a lot of it didn't necessarily have to be true. Like, yes, Facebook and Julie, with me working with Julie, we learned that they changed a lot of rules. It was longer and harder for us to get approved to be able to run ads and to market ourselves, but not ourselves, but market for like the causes that we were seeing that we wanted to market at the time for the gubernatorial elections. I think that with the technology, with the advertisements, we just need to do it with electoral college. Like, we just need to just do the popular vote because that's just what we need to do. Sorry, I got a little distracted. My bad. So my brain went somewhere else.
By my husband walking in the door. Yes. We're this is real life, you guys.
It is. It is.
So, I hear that, I feel that, I agree with it. Also, so there whether or not we like to admit it, there's some good that came out of the 2016 elections,
Yep.
right? And that has to do with, in my opinion, exactly what you're talking about, the digital space and the basically cyber criminals. So in the 2016 elections, there was a lot of outside, or at least
Yeah.
quote
Alleged.
unquote,
Mhm.
said and alleged to be outside influence on our election, where different ads and misinformation were able to be distributed a lot more freely.
Yep.
And so you see that playing out in terms of different policies and different ways that private companies such as, and public companies like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter are functioning. And so during the midterms, yes, Chantel and I did have to very much, go about making our way around these new rules, and it was hard because the reason why it was hard is because these rules were new, so different people could access different strategies in a different way. But I do believe that it was, in the end, it was good for our democracy.
Yeah. So what is your opinion? Do away with electoral college? Do we keep it? Do we go with a popular vote?
So,
Yeah.
a mix. So my husband and I actually were talking about this the other day, and we sit in the same exact fence where the electoral college is still beneficial in terms of just getting things to be more streamlined, but it is an outdated process. So I'm saying a mix because we're imagining a world where the electoral college of one state doesn't go specifically in all to one candidate. So imagine where the popular vote would be distributed in terms of electoral votes by percentage of votes. So if there were 10 votes for the state, or 10 in the electoral college, and 70% of the state voted for one candidate, that candidate would get 7, and then the other 30% would go to the other candidate. So that candidate would have 3. And so in the end, it wouldn't be a 270 threshold, it would be a majority threshold, but it would echo the popular vote in a lot of ways.
That makes sense. Yeah. So again, I do think that it was done for a reason. Obviously, they set it up for a reason, electoral college. So, it might need to be revisited. It might need to be revisited, and they need to
Yeah.
fix it.
And I think a lot of why it needs to be revisited has to do with this theme that we come back on all the time, and this is the digital world. The space that we're in right now means that everyone can get information everywhere. There aren't rural parts of America that have absolutely no idea what's going on in the world, and if they do, it's because they don't want to know what's going on.
Yeah.
And so the electoral college was sort of playing to that, right? Where some people are more accessible, and this state is more, spread out, and the population is this and that. Where it's a different time. It's a different time completely, and we have to adapt.
Yeah. What are your thoughts for my sister and I briefly talked about this yesterday. So Joe Biden wins, he gets to 270, boom, whether Pennsylvania comes in first, or will Nevada and Arizona come in first, or they all come in, like he wins, right? What are your thoughts on the next 3 months with Trump sitting behind that desk in the Oval Office?
I'm seeing chaos. I am, and it's so sad to say. And you and I, we're gonna actually finish this episode later talking about our one of the challenges that you and I are working on, and that's our positive affirmations. But you and I are firm believers of, like, your attitude means a lot, right? So it's hard for me to say this, but I can see a world where Trump is such a sore loser that it creates chaos within our country, and one in which, Biden wins means there's a world where Trump is not going to let this
Yeah.
just play out the way it's supposed to, in the way that, like, the transition needs to take place very smoothly. And so there are, I think, just over 70 days between elections and inauguration day that are dwindled down every time we have to wait for a new trial, every time we have to wait for different steps. So that means that the next president doesn't have time to start moving into the House. That could mean that, they aren't briefing their national security officers or not picking their cabinets and things like that. But also on a personal note, it could mean that their kids haven't figured out what schools they're going to go to. And then there's chaos in terms of their psyche, which affects the leadership. So I can see this being really messy. And it's not just a situation that's going to affect us between now and inauguration day in January. I think it can have a more long-term effect. And I say that because there is evidence that within the 9/11 report, actually, that the delay that took place, the transition of power did affect the results and, the national security, because there was, a tough time briefing the people who just like make everything run within the White House. So
Yeah, and that makes sense because if you think about it, right, without knowing all of those things that you shared as far as like what was in the 9/11 reporting, and I feel like Biden and his administration is going to have a lot of international cleanup to do in the relationships that Trump kind of, killed. And I understand people are like, oh, they're all politicians, everybody's corrupt, this is corrupt, that's corrupt. So like, yeah, if you look at certain policies, they might seem like, what was that about? But, one person is not going to, or one administration is not going to be the best for everybody in the United States. It's just not going to happen, right? Because they have, even in a corporation, in an organization, if policies are changed, if HR procedures are changed, it's not going to be best for every single person in your company. But if the people who are sitting in those seats making the decisions are trying to think what's going to be the best for the entire organization, what's going to be the best for the entire group, that's what we need. And and I think that's what we need to look at when we're going to vote. Who, like, this candidate's policies, who are they lining up for? What are their beliefs? What are their thoughts as far as, running this country? While yeah, unfortunately, taxes might be an issue for the next person, but what is it going to do to our economy as a whole? And I think that's how we need to think. Unfortunately, everybody's not going to think that way because there's self-preservation. There's thinking about just your household and you surviving. And I understand we do need to survive. You want to make sure you're not, just throwing your money away at taxes. But is this tax plan going to hurt or help the economy? And I think that's really the way we need to think when we look at candidates' plans.
I agree with that. I agree with that 100%. And here's where I sit. In the grand scheme of things, Biden's tax plan doesn't affect you very much unless you're making over $400,000. So the issue is that the 1%, those, who have millions, who, are making over that, threshold, are very self-preserving, which I get, I understand, but at the same time, like, you're still able to live a quality of life that is sustainable. So this is the long-term Democratic versus Republican debate. It's finances versus the people. And it's hard to say it that way, but that's exactly what it is. And so in a lot of ways, I find myself to be fiscally conservative because yes, if I've earned something, I would like those earnings to be mine. But at the same time, we cannot tax percentage-wise differently just based off of your finances. So let's say that I'm making $10 and you're making $100, you're paying 30% and I'm paying 60%, whatever that, no, we both need to pay 30, which means you're paying more. And that's just my mindset. And I know it's oversimplified in that analogy, but at the end of the day, I agree that it's more important that we think about the people. And Biden has flat out said that he's not going to be a president for red or blue states. He's not going to be a Democratic or Republican president. He wants to be one for everyone, which is big talk. And, we expect that that's what everyone says. But Trump didn't say that. Trump specifically is always, well, the Democrats said, and it's just the Democrats versus the Republicans. And that's very dividing.
Is that your Trump voice?
That's my Trump voice. Was it good?
Yeah, it was very good. So we do have a comment, but before we go there, because the question that Josh put on here is actually
a good one.
Yeah, it is really good. Speaking of the taxes, right, and then we'll move on. when I think about people who have tons of money and they're like complaining about tax increases, after you pay your taxes, are you still able to like live your same lifestyle? Are you still like, is everything still fine? Do you still have your savings? Do you still have hundreds of thousands of more dollars in the bank? Like that's
When
where
you
it's like,
eat dinner.
right,
Like,
right. And that's the difference. And again, I'm not saying that well, yeah, your money should be taken from you. No, I agree. What Julie said, where if she's, you know, she's earning money, she wants to hold on to the money as best she can and be able to do what she wants with her money. I feel that, I understand that. But to the family who has to pay taxes, and it's like, where am I getting? And then so you've already paid it out of your check, and then they want more. It's like, where am I getting that from? Where am I pulling
right.
the money from to pay y'all, like to pay the government? So that's
Yeah.
to me the
And you know what? That's one of the largest misunderstandings about Biden's tax plan, because he is really about, you know, the majority, and us, those of you listening, those of you who we would have these discussions or maybe even arguments with, don't really fall into a bracket where you could be complaining.
right.
Not at this point, okay? So let's just get somewhere before you start complaining. But you're right, Chantel. Let's get into Josh's question. Do you want to go ahead and read that out?
Yes. So Josh's comment: how do we empower the other parties? I saw the other candidates for presidency and didn't even know who they were. Is this a finance or economical problem? And I also want to say, not even just for presidency, for other offices and other seats that we had to like vote for. It's like same thing. Who are you? I didn't even
Right.
see. Yeah.
Well, I think so. I was thinking about this when I saw the question pop up. It's a great question. Thank you, Josh. I it's two pronged. How do we empower the other parties? And I'm assuming he's talking about the independents, the green parties, you know, the less polarized parties. And I think that would mean we would have to revisit the entire system. There have been candidates within the Green Party that I think are amazing and such, but because we know that people in at least the administration and the way that we function here in America now are seeing a two-party system, it's very undermining to do that, right? It's throwing it's like you're driving down the street and then you're throwing a whole bunch of like extra speed bumps and that's my opinion. I think it's great that there's other parties like the Green Party and Independent Party, but unless they start really competing in midterms or in primaries with the other parties, I think it can be super undermining. So what I would suggest instead would be to revisit our party system, our two-party system, and figure out what is a more inclusive way to approach that, because it's true, there are a lot of times in which, you know, myself as a Democrat has some ideologies that maybe the rest of the party doesn't typically share. So nobody falls in one box. We have to understand that. Yeah, ambiguous answer, but
Yeah.
that's what
And
I
then, so I've also been thinking that people who are running for different offices in both the midterms, primaries, presidency, well, presidency not so much because that does get national, like global coverage. And I might be selfish in saying this, and maybe I need to, I do know that as a person going to be voting, I need to know who I'm voting for, but maybe they need to start visiting how they're going to reach us, how they're
right.
going to reach the voter. Um, you know, okay, well, we run ads on TV, but what about people that don't have cable? We run ads on YouTube. I skip those ads. Like, how are you going to reach me? How are you going to get me to vote for you? Like, and I don't have the answer. I don't know, but I kind of feel like the same way as Josh, you know, you get to the ballot and sometimes, you know, there's certain offices and certain seats that you're going to vote for. And then when you look at that ballot, you're like, what are these other offices
Yeah.
for and who are these people? And then you kind of go with your party affiliation. You know, if you're Democrat, you're like, I'm just going to select everybody Democrat. But it's like, what if that Republican person or the independent actually was the better person than the Democrat? So
Right.
I just am wondering if, my opinion is that these candidates, if you really think they need to figure out a better way and a better tactic
Right.
to let us know who they are.
I agree with that. And I also think that we have agency too as constituents, right? It's
Absolutely.
important for us to go out and do the research too. And I find so many people just get their research from memes, and there's so much disinformation and very misleading information out there. So if you're not doing your research, then I'm sorry, I'm a little bit offended if you're coming to me with misinformation or main argument against one party or the other. The other part of Josh's question was, is this a financial or economic problem? Which partly, yes. Yeah, absolutely. What isn't? At the same time, I think it has to do with two other things. And it's one, we're lazy as a people. We don't go out and try to understand our government until it's election day, right? Until it's around a large election. How many people, don't vote in the midterms? How many people don't even know what term midterms means?
Yeah.
How many people don't know their city council? Because all politics are local politics. So if you don't understand who your city councilman is, if you don't understand who your senators, your congresswoman, your even your governor, and you're not trying to be active in this process, then don't come to me later and be like, well, I don't understand any of this. I wasn't a part of the system. We have Google, we have agency, we have the power to also inform ourselves about these other individuals. And I think the information out there about these different candidates and people could be more, accessible. Yes.
Yeah.
And it also could be written in a more understandable, form of language instead of this legalese. At the same time, I would encourage people to go out and do their own research.
I definitely do agree with that. I'm trying to see. So it's so funny, and in saying all of that, I think it's also important to know that you can reach out to your councilman, you can reach out to your congressman, and you can reach out to the people that are here in the city, supposed to be, or in your town, who's supposed to be working for you. I think that's something that, while we always say, oh, they're supposed to work for us, right? They're supposed to do what we're asking them to do as the people in the United States, but we don't. Like, are we reaching out to them? Are we trying to get appointments? Are we leaving messages to say, hey, I'd like someone to call me. These are my concerns. What are you doing about it?
Right.
And you're absolutely right. So while, yes, I still would like to get some more creative ways that candidates or people running would be able to reach us and get their information to us about who they are. Here's my policies, here's my background, here's what I've done. I also do agree with you about, we also need to know ourselves. If you're going to vote, if you're going to complain about something going on, you're having right, I shouldn't say trash issues. COVID has messed it all up. But if you're having other issues with things that are going on in your town that that your congressman can help you with, or your councilman, whoever, even to the school district, everywhere, if there's town hall meetings, get in those town hall meetings, listen what's going on, and get involved. So I agree with that.
Yeah. And another point, that I just wanted to make about educating yourself is, yes, you could educate yourself and you could say, I'm just going to use something from this election, like the crime bill that Biden supported, that was a huge contention in this election, where, why would Biden have voted in 1994 for a crime bill that then created, systems of mass incarceration? Well, at that time,
Yeah.
there was no understanding of that in the way that there is now. In 80s and 90s, crime was violent crime, especially, was out of control. And so even our African American leaders had voted for this crime bill. The Democratic Party voted for this crime bill. The majority of the Black caucus in Congress voted for this crime bill. So you have to understand, all of the aspects of the data, where it's like a lot of people would be like, oh, I see his voting record was this, and this, but what was going on at that time? And I'm not saying that every decision that everyone has to make is right or validated, but also understanding where they were at that time. He was trying to work for the people that we're trying to protect by saying, why would you vote for this? I don't know. So we have a couple minutes left.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. Last
Oh,
thought.
no, go ahead. Go ahead, Fran.
Sometimes when you put in policies and procedures thinking that they're going to work for everybody, until you dole it out, until you actually say, okay, here it is, we're putting this into play. Sometimes that very thing that you thought was going to work, now that it's in action, it's not working. So, I can't say that that's what happened with them, but that could be the same. We're thinking on paper, it looks great. But now that we've put it in, made it a law, this is what's going to happen. It's a bill. Actually, it didn't work out.
Yeah. So 100%. So we're just going to shift gears for the last few minutes of this episode because we like to end with a little bit more lighthearted nature. Chantel and I have been continuing our positive affirmations challenge. And for those of you who maybe are just listening today or haven't listened in the past, we did a competition last year where we decided that we would challenge ourselves to speak affirmations into our lives. And so, Chantel, I wanted to see how that's going for you at this time, especially during the election.
You know, that's funny. So I have to be honest, right? For accountability, I have not really been doing them. I still pray and everything, but I haven't like been sticking to them. This morning as I was in the shower and I said my prayer and I was like, you know what? I need to get some of these out because one, I know that the times that we're in. Two, I know how I'm feeling with the elections and everything. Three, the coronavirus is still here. For like, so all of these things, I need to continue to build myself up, right? So I'm praying and that's good for me. That's something that I do. And then I have family who's going to help build me up, but I also need to build myself up as well, just in case certain times come, because things happen, life happens. And I'm not saying that I'm going to, like, if something were to happen, I'll be like, I'm strong. That didn't affect me. No, but the recovery process, you know, unfortunately, should something happen, I feel that the positive affirmations and just speaking life, continue speaking life into myself and just telling myself who I am, who the Bible says I am, who the Father says I am, who I believe myself to be, is going to help equip me should I have to face times of we are facing times of uncertainty, like for now. Yeah, right now.
I hear that. I echo those sentiments. There were many days in which I had forgotten or just not prioritized my affirmations, but I do know that on the days that I did, I felt better. And so sometimes it's just the only positive thing that you hear in a day. Sometimes it's the only positive moment that you have is when you have your devotion or you're speaking your affirmations. So whatever it takes, just look for times in your day to find positivity. And that positivity might only be like my curls are on fleek today or something, but you need to find that.
Yeah, sometimes you have to encourage yourself. And it's not that, you know, you could walk out of the house looking bad, like, hey, look at you, you fly, you cute, whatever, right? And, you know, somebody might not say it. They might have noticed, but they don't say it. Does that mean that because outside people didn't say it, that you should feel like, oh, nobody? No, tell yourself. Sometimes you have to tell yourself. And then the added bonus, I feel, is, you know, other people seeing you, your husband seeing you, or going out and somebody saying, hey, girl, I like your sunglasses, or like whatever. Oh, thank you. Like, that's just the added bonus of you already telling yourself, I look good today, and I'm encouraging myself. And no matter what anybody says to me today, I'm gonna believe it.
Amen. Thank you so much, Chantel, for this conversation today. Thank you, Josh, Mr. Smith, anybody who commented and joined the discussion. We're so excited to have such a great community. And I would challenge you guys to not only complete your affirmations, not only to figure out what's going on, you know, yourself, the research, and compliment yourself, but to put some positivity out in the world. So smile at someone. You know, I challenge you to perform an act of kindness every day. And so we'll add that to our challenges in terms of our affirmations. But if you can make someone smile, then you're doing something in this road. So we thank you guys for being here. And we really appreciate you guys. Tune in next week for more Viera Vida.